Have you ever met someone who prays every day, studies every day, tries to be mindful every day, yet somehow becomes more impatient, more sharp, more exhausted? Like the more they practice, the more their heart turns into a clenched fist. Have you ever looked at your own life and thought, I am doing the work, I am trying so hard to improve myself, so why do I feel more tired than before? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about something many sincere people feel, but do not dare to say out loud. Practice is supposed to bring clarity, softness, and courage. But sometimes, practice feels like a second job that never ends. You wake up, you tell yourself you must do your session. You must do it right. You must not miss a day. You must progress. You must become better. And instead of waking up, you feel like you are being chased by your own spiritual ambition. I want to offer two key ideas before we go into the long story and the deeper lessons. First, spiritual practice is like medicine. If you take the right medicine in the wrong way, you can still get hurt. Not because the medicine is bad, but because you did not match it to your actual condition. Second, the goal of practice is not to become a perfect image of goodness. The goal is to become less harmful, more awake, more compassionate, more stable. When practice is done with the wrong inner engine, it becomes another form of greed, another form of control, another form of self-violence. That is why you get tired. Now I want to tell you a story. Not a myth, not a fairy tale, but a modern story that feels like real life. Because it is. I will call the person Maya. Maya found practice during a hard season. A relationship ended badly. Work became unstable. Family expectations pressed down like a heavy hand. She was not sleeping well. Her mind was racing. And she felt this constant pressure in her chest that never fully left. At first, discovering spiritual practice felt like water in a dry mouth. She watched videos, listened to talks, read books, tried meditation, tried chanting. The first few weeks felt hopeful. She could sense a small space opening between a thought and a reaction. She could sense that maybe she did not have to live as a slave to anxiety. Then something changed. She started chasing practice the way people chase approval. Her mind turned it into a scoreboard. How many minutes today? How many repetitions today? How many days without missing? How calm did I feel? How pure was my intention? How few negative thoughts appeared? I want you to notice something. None of these questions are evil. But the tone is everything. When the tone is fear, the practice becomes a cage. Maya began forcing herself. She set strict schedules. She punished herself when she missed a session. She compared herself to others. She watched practitioners online who seemed serene and radiant, and she thought, I must get there soon or I am failing. She even began speaking a certain way, a stiff way. When friends shared problems, Maya answered with spiritual phrases. But the phrases had no warmth. They felt like armor. They felt like she was trying to prove something. Inside her, the tiredness grew. She woke up already feeling behind. If she meditated, she judged the meditation. If her mind wandered, she attacked herself. If emotions rose, she saw them as enemies. She wanted to remove her humanity, as if awakening meant becoming a clean machine. This is where the first trap appears. I call it practice as punishment. Many people are not practicing. They are scolding themselves in a spiritual costume. They treat each wandering thought as proof they are broken. They treat each emotion as proof they are unworthy. They treat each imperfect day as failure. They approach practice the way a harsh parent approaches a child, always correcting, never listening. The mind responds to this the way any nervous system responds to attack. It tightens. It becomes defensive. It becomes tired. Because the body cannot relax under constant inner criticism. Maya did not realize she was doing this. She thought she was being disciplined. Then life tested her. Her mother called one evening and complained about something small. Maya had already had a long day. She was hungry. She had not rested. But she told herself she must be kind, because she is a practitioner. So she tried to speak gently. But inside, she was boiling. After the call, she sat to chant. But the chant felt like sand in her mouth. Her mind kept replaying the call. She felt guilty for being irritated. Then she felt angry at herself for being guilty. Then she felt ashamed for being angry. Then she felt exhausted by the whole inner mess. She thought practice was not working. She thought she was not suited for it. This is where the second trap appears. I call it mistaking suppression for transformation. Suppression is when you push anger down so you can look calm. Transformation is when you see anger clearly, understand its causes, soften the grasping under it, and choose a wise response. Suppression looks peaceful from the outside, but inside it is a pressure cooker. It costs energy to keep emotions down. That is why people feel tired. Maya was suppressing. She had learned spiritual language, but she had not learned emotional honesty. She used practice as a lid, and lids crack. A few days later, she snapped at a coworker. It was not dramatic, but it was sharp enough to leave a mark. The coworker looked stunned, then cold. The room changed. Maya went home and cried. She felt like a fraud. She had been trying so hard to become better. How could she still hurt people? That night she remembered something she once heard. A simple line that sounds almost too ordinary to be deep. Real practice is not about never falling. Real practice is about returning. Return to breath. Return to awareness. Return to kindness. Return to truth. Return to humility. So she tried something new. Instead of forcing a long session, she sat for a short time. She placed one hand on her chest. She breathed slowly. She admitted, I am tired. I am scared. I am trying to control everything. I am afraid that if I do not do it perfectly, I will never be safe. When she said that, her shoulders dropped a little. Tears came. Not dramatic tears, just the body releasing a little burden. This is the first moment of wisdom. Wisdom is not a concept. Wisdom is the moment you stop lying to yourself. Then she asked herself a question that changed her approach. Why am I practicing? If the answer is to become a perfect image, you will suffer, because images are rigid. Life is not rigid. You are not rigid. You are a living process. If the answer is to become more awake and less harmful, you will suffer less, because you will aim at training the heart, not performing a role. This is where the third trap appears. I call it practice as identity. When practice becomes identity, you become fragile, because identity is always threatened. If someone criticizes you, it threatens the identity of being a good practitioner. If you feel anger, it threatens the identity. If you struggle, it threatens the identity. Then, you either hide, or you pretend, or you attack others to protect the image. That is why some people become judgmental the more they practice. They are not becoming wise. They are defending an identity. Maya began noticing this in herself. She noticed that she had started judging her friends. She would think, they are so unconscious. They complain too much. They are attached. They are ignorant. Those thoughts gave her a temporary feeling of superiority. But afterward she felt empty and alone, because superiority is loneliness in disguise. The heart that looks down cannot truly connect, and a heart that cannot connect cannot rest. That is another reason practice makes people tired. They lose warmth. They lose human closeness. They lose the simple medicine of friendship and laughter. They become serious, and seriousness becomes a stiff prison. Now I want to bring in the fourth trap. This one is extremely common, especially among people who are sincere and hardworking. I call it transcational practice. Transcational practice sounds like this inside your mind. I did my session, so I should get peace. I chanted, so my problems should disappear. I helped someone, so life should reward me. I stayed patient, so people should treat me well. I tried so hard. So the universe shows me a smooth path. When life does not pay immediately, you feel cheated. That feeling creates bitterness. Bitterness drains energy. Bitterness also poisons compassion. You start thinking, why should I be kind if people are still difficult? Why should I practice if I still suffer? But practice is not a vending machine. It is training. Training changes you slowly. Sometimes quietly. Sometimes in ways you cannot measure until a storm hits, and you realize you responded with less harm than you would have before. That is progress. That is real. Maya had to learn this the hard way. She practiced intensely for a month and expected her anxiety to disappear. But anxiety did not disappear. It changed shape. Some days it became subtle. Some days it became loud. She got frustrated. She thought, I am wasting time. Then one day, a real crisis arrived. A family member got sick. It was sudden. The kind of news that makes your stomach drop and your mind go blank. In the past, Maya would have collapsed into panic, spiraled into catastrophic thoughts, flooded her family with frantic messages, and made the atmosphere worse. This time, she still felt fear, but something different happened. She took a slow breath. She felt her feet on the ground. She spoke gently. She asked what was needed. She drove her family member to the hospital without yelling at traffic. She held a hand in silence. She did what she could do. Later she realized something. She had not become free of fear. She had become less controlled by fear. That is the fruit of practice. Not the disappearance of waves, but the ability to stand steadily in the water. Now I want to expand this into a deeper teaching. Because many of you are not just tired. You are spiritually tired. That is a special kind of exhaustion. Spiritual tiredness is when you feel you are trying to become good, but you do not feel joy. You do not feel warmth. You feel like you are carrying a burden called improvement. So let us go deeper. Why does this happen? Because you are trying to climb the mountain using the fuel of self-rejection. Self-rejection is powerful fuel, but it burns dirty. It produces smoke. The smoke is shame, guilt, harshness, and constant fear of failing. You can move fast for a while, but you will collapse because the fuel is toxic. What is the clean fuel? The clean fuel is compassion and truth. Compassion means you treat your own mind the way you would treat a child learning to walk. You do not scream at the child for falling. You help the child stand again. Truth means you are honest about your condition. If you are exhausted, you adjust. If you are emotionally overwhelmed, you slow down. If you are using practice to avoid pain, you admit it. If you are comparing yourself to others, you catch it and return. Return is the heart of the path. Now I want to bring in a story from the tradition, retold in a modern tone. There was a student who wanted enlightenment, the way a thirsty person wants water. The student trained hard. The student did not sleep much. The student chased experiences. The student wanted to see lights and visions and special states. The teacher watched for a long time, then asked a simple question. When you tighten a string too much, what happened? The student answered, it breaks. The teacher asked, and when you loosen a string too much, what happens? The student answered, it makes no sound. The teacher smiled and said, then tune your life like an instrument. This is the middle way. Not extreme forcing, not lazy drifting. Clear, steady sincerity. Maya began applying this. She did something simple but revolutionary. She stopped measuring practice by intensity and started measuring it by effect. Does practice make me more honest? Does practice make me less reactive? Does practice make me kinder? Does practice help me repair quickly when I harm? Does practice make me more patient with imperfection? Does practice reduce my hunger for praise? If the answer was yes, even slightly, that was progress. If the answer was no, she did not conclude she was hopeless. She concluded she needed to adjust method. Sometimes the adjustment was practical. More sleep, less screen time, better food, a walk in nature, fewer late-night arguments online. Because your mind is not separate from your body. If your body is depleted, your mind will be irritable. Then you will blame your spirit when the real issue is basic care. Sometimes the adjustment was ethical. She noticed she was still speaking sharply to people she loved. She realized she could chant all day, but if her speech planted harm, her heart would stay disturbed. So she trained speech. She practiced pausing before answering. She practiced not interrupting. She practiced apologizing quickly. She practiced replacing sarcasm with sincerity. This is important. Many people want mystical progress while ignoring moral training. But moral training is the ground. If the ground is shaky, you cannot build a stable house. Sometimes the adjustment was emotional. She began allowing herself to feel sadness without calling it failure. She stopped trying to meditate sadness away. She simply sat with it. She breathed. She said, "Sadness is here." She felt it in the body. She watched it change. This is not indulgence. This is courage. Facing your inner weather is how you stop being controlled by it. Now, as Maya became less extreme, something surprising happened. She became more motivated, not less, because exhaustion comes from inner war. When the war ends, energy returns. She also became more compassionate toward others. Instead of judging people for being messy, she remembered her own mess. That memory softened her. Softness is not weakness. Softness is the sign of wisdom working. This is how destiny changes. Not because the world becomes perfect, but because your responses become less harmful. More wise, more patient, more courageous. Let me speak directly to you now. If you are tired from practice, do not quit in bitterness. First, investigate your inner engine. Are you practicing to punish yourself? Are you practicing to earn worthiness? Are you practicing to control the future? Are you practicing to perform goodness? Then, return to a vow that is simple and clean. May I become less harmful. May I become more awake. May I cultivate compassion for myself and others. May I respond to life with wisdom. May I accept impermanence without panic. When you practice with this vow, your heart relaxes. Relaxation is not laziness. Relaxation is the condition for insight. A mind that is always clenched cannot see clearly. Now I want to offer a final long reflection, because many of you carry a secret fear. The fear is, if I relax, I will become worse. This fear is common. It comes from a life where you survived by forcing yourself. You learned that pressure equals progress. You learned that if you stop pushing, everything falls apart. But on this path, relaxing does not mean abandoning discipline. It means removing cruelty. Cruel discipline creates rebellion inside. Rebellion creates exhaustion. Exhaustion creates collapse. Collapse creates shame. Shame creates more cruel discipline. Kind discipline creates stability. Stability creates trust. Trust creates consistent effort. Consistent effort creates real change. So if you are tired, do not ask, how can I do more? Ask, where am I leaking energy through inner cruelty, comparison, suppression, and transaction? Repair those leaks, then practice will begin to feel like nourishment again. Before we close, I want to share a small personal moment that may mirror yours. There was a season when I thought practice meant never being irritated. So whenever irritation appeared, I attacked myself. I tried to sit longer. I tried to force calm. I tried to become a statue. It did not work. It made me tired and stiff. Then I learned something humble. Irritation is not always a sign of failure. Sometimes it is a sign that you are overworked, under-rested, and overstimulated. Sometimes the most spiritual action is to sleep and wake up kinder. Sometimes the most spiritual action is to say no. Sometimes the most spiritual action is to stop proving and start listening. When I accepted that, Practice became simpler. Not easier, but simpler. And simple practice often becomes deep practice. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this spoke to you, tell me in the comments what kind of tiredness you feel. Is it physical tiredness? Emotional tiredness? Spiritual tiredness? Also tell me which trap you recognize most in yourself. Not to judge yourself, but to wake up. If you want more long videos that go beyond slogans and actually help your daily mind, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment. Your support keeps this space alive. Stay with your breath, stay with your vow, and do not forget the middle way. Input Article 8. Generated time 2025-12-2012-00. Do you think Tara practice is only about safety? Why real devotion can brighten your destiny? Have you ever prayed for protection, but deep down you were really praying to stop feeling afraid? Have you ever noticed that two people can face the same crisis, yet one becomes bitter and broken while the other becomes clearer, kinder, and strangely luminous? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Tara practice, and we are going to talk about it in a way that respects the heart and also respects reality. Some people treat Tara as a symbol of rescue and swift protection. Others dismiss it as superstition. I want to walk a middle way. I want to show you that the deepest power of this practice is not just getting a smooth life. The deepest power is transforming the mind that creates your destiny. Here are the two ideas we will carry through this story. First, protection is not only about removing external danger. Protection is also about protecting your mind from collapsing into fear, hatred, and desperation, because those states create harmful karma and drag your future into darker patterns. Second, Tara practice is at its strongest when it becomes a training in courage and compassion, not a bargaining ritual. Let me tell you a long story. I will call the main person Arya. Arya grew up in a home where safety never felt guaranteed. Nothing dramatic that makes headlines, but the slow daily uncertainty that shapes a nervous system. Parents arguing, money tight, promises broken, adults who were tired and not emotionally present. Arya learned early that if you want stability, you must control everything. As an adult, Arya looked successful. She worked hard. She planned everything. She rarely asked for help. She had a reputation for being strong. But inside, she lived with a hidden storm. Fear of losing. Fear of being abandoned. Fear of making mistakes. Fear that if she loosened her grip for 1 second, life would punish her. Then a new crisis arrived. Health issues appeared in her family. Suddenly the illusion of control cracked. She could not plan her way out. She could not work harder to guarantee outcome. She felt helpless, and helplessness triggered old fear. Someone introduced her to Tara practice. Arya did not know what to think. She was not raised with devotion. She liked logic. She liked measurable results. But her heart was tired. Her mind was drowning. So she tried. The first night she sat down, she felt awkward. She tried to repeat a simple phrase. Her mind kept interrupting. This is silly. This will not work. I am wasting time. What is the point? Then she remembered something a teacher once said. When the mind is in pain, it will resist anything that asks it to soften, because softness feels unsafe to a mind trained by fear. So she did not fight the resistance. She simply kept returning. She breathed. She repeated the phrase slowly. She did not demand miracles. She asked for one thing. Help me return to clarity. In the beginning, nothing magical happened, but she noticed a tiny shift. After 10 minutes, her shoulders were less tight. Her breath was deeper. Her thoughts were still there, but they moved slower. She could see them instead of being swallowed by them. That is already rescue, because most suffering is not created by the event alone. It is created by the mind spiraling beyond the event. When the mind spirals, it says, I will not survive. It says, everything is ruined. It says, I must control. Then it makes desperate decisions that create more suffering. When Era practice gave her even a small pause, it protected her from her own worst impulses. Over the next weeks, Aria practiced daily. Some days she felt calm. Some days she felt nothing. Some days she felt irritation. But she stayed consistent in a gentle way. Not forcing, not bargaining, just returning. Then something deeper started to happen. And this is the part I want you to listen to carefully. Devotion began to reshape her relationship with fear. Most people approach devotion like a child begging a parent. Please fix this. Please remove pain. Please give me what I want. But real devotion matures. Real devotion becomes a vow. Not only please help me, but please help me become someone who can face life with courage and compassion. Aria began ending her practice with a simple inner promise. If I am protected, I will protect others. If I receive support, I will support others. If I find clarity, I will share clarity. The moment she made this vow, her practice changed. It was no longer self-centered. It became a path of the heart. And here is a truth that many traditions repeat. When the heart expands beyond the small self, fear becomes smaller. Why? Because fear is often the fear of losing me, losing my image, losing my comfort, losing my control, losing my future. When you practice compassion, the center shifts from me to we. That shift is liberation. Aria began noticing changes in daily life. She stopped snapping as much. She listened more. She apologized quicker. She stopped controlling conversations. She became less addicted to being right. She became more willing to admit, I do not know. These are not minor changes. They are karmic changes. Because karma is built out of repeated choices. When you stop snapping, you stop planting conflict. When you listen more, you plant trust. When you apologize quicker, you repair relationships before bitterness hardens. When you stop controlling, you allow others to breathe, and people respond with more goodwill. Goodwill becomes support. Support becomes resilience. Resilience becomes a brighter destiny. Now let us talk about the idea of swift rescue in a grounded way. Swift rescue often means you are rescued from the moment of collapse. It is the moment before you send the destructive message. It is the moment before you act recklessly. It is the moment before you say the cruel sentence to your child. It is the moment before you quit everything in despair. It is the moment before you numb yourself with harmful habits. If practice gives you a pause at that moment, it changes your entire life trajectory. Because the worst consequences often come from a few impulsive moments. Aria experienced this. One night she received a call that her family member had taken a turn for the worse. Fear surged. Her hands shook. Her mind began the disaster movie. She wanted to run, to scream, to blame. Then, without thinking, she whispered the phrase she had been practicing. Not as a spell, but as a rope. She breathed. She felt the floor. The fear did not vanish, but it stopped turning into hysteria. She drove carefully. She spoke gently. She made practical decisions. She supported the rest of the family. She stayed steady enough to be useful. Later she said something that stayed with me. I did not feel protected from the event. I felt protected from becoming a version of myself that would make everything worse. That is wisdom. Now I want to address a misunderstanding. Some people think devotion means passivity. They think if you pray, you stop acting. That is not real practice. Real practice combines inner reliance with outer responsibility. You practice to stabilize the mind. Then you act with clarity. Aria still did medical research. She still asked doctors questions. She still arranged logistics. She still sought help. She was not waiting for miracles. She was training her heart so that her actions were less panicked and more wise. This is the middle way again. Devotion without responsibility becomes fantasy. Responsibility without devotion can become cold control. Together, they become balanced strength. Now let us go even deeper. Because the title promised something big. Why can this brighten destiny? Destiny is not only what happens to you. Destiny is the pattern of causes you keep planting. If you plant fear, you will harvest chaos. If you plant anger, you harvest conflict. If you plant greed, you harvest anxiety. If you plant compassion, you harvest connection. If you plant patience, you harvest steadiness. If you plant honesty, you harvest trust. Tarot practice, at its best, is a training in compassion and courageous action. It trains you to return to a heart that wants to benefit, not just survive. When that becomes your daily direction, destiny brightens, because your choices become cleaner. Arya also discovered another layer of protection, the protection of not being alone. This is not only mystical, this is very human. When you practice with sincerity, you often find community. Not always, but often. You find teachers, friends, fellow practitioners, people who remind you to breathe, to keep going. That network becomes support during storms. Storms are unavoidable. Support is cultivated. Now I want to bring the story home with a quiet mirror. Many of you want protection because you feel your life is too heavy. You want the external conditions to soften. That is understandable. But if your mind remains trapped in fear, even good conditions will not satisfy you. Your mind will invent danger. So the deepest protection is the training of the heart. If you want to begin, keep it simple. A short daily practice, done consistently, with sincerity, not forcing. End each session by wishing well for others, not only for yourself. Carry the spirit into speech and action. Let compassion become practical. Thank you for being here. In the comments, share what you must need protection from right now. Not only external problems, but the inner habits that drain you. Fear, anger, self-hatred, hopelessness. If you want more long-form videos that make devotion practical and grounded, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment to support this work. May your heart become steadier. May your compassion become stronger. May your destiny become brighter. Input Article 9. Generated time 2025-12-2012-00. Why does watching other people's faults make you suffer more? One teaching that can turn your destiny. Have you ever noticed that the more you focus on other people's mistakes, the more your own heart feels sour? Have you ever wondered why you started practice hoping to be kinder, yet somehow you became more easily annoyed by everyone around you? Welcome back to the channel. Today we talk about a teaching that sounds simple but can change your whole life if you take it seriously. Do not keep staring at the faults of the world. At first, people misunderstand this. They think it means ignoring injustice. They think it means pretending everything is fine. That is not what it means. It means that obsession with judging others becomes a poison that you drink every day. You think you are correcting the world, but you are actually feeding your own suffering. Two main ideas for today. First, your attention is your life. Wherever your attention lies, your mind becomes shaped by it. If your attention lies in fault-finding, your mind becomes a factory of irritation. Second, spiritual practice is not about building a courtroom in your head. It is about cultivating wisdom and compassion. And that begins with seeing your own mind clearly. Let me tell you a story. I will call him Ethan. Ethan began practice with sincere hope. He wanted to manage his anger. He wanted to reduce anxiety. He wanted to be a better partner, a better friend, a better human being. He read teachers, listened to talks, tried meditation. At first he felt inspiration. He felt moved by ideas like compassion and non-attachment. He thought, this is what I need. Then something subtle happened. The more he learned about ethics, the more he started judging everyone around him. He judged his partner for being emotional. He judged friends for being shallow. He judged co-workers for being selfish. He judged strangers for being rude. He judged his family for being ignorant. At first he thought this was progress. He thought he was seeing clearly. He thought he had standards now. But his mood became worse. He became tense in public spaces because he was always scanning for mistakes. He became exhausted after social events because his mind kept collecting evidence that people are flawed. He became lonely because his heart could not relax into warmth. And here is the irony. The more he judged others, the less patient he became. The less patient he became, the more harsh his speech became. The more harsh his speech became, the more conflict he created. The more conflict he created, the more he felt justified in judging. A perfect loop of suffering. One day, Ethan and his partner argued about something small, a minor misunderstanding. But Ethan turned it into a moral lecture. He used spiritual language like a weapon. He said, "You are attached. You are reactive. You are unconscious. You need to practice." His partner stared at him and said quietly, "You talk about compassion, but you do not feel compassionate." That sentence broke him, because it was true. Ethan realized he had been using practice to feel superior, not to become kind. He had built a spiritual identity, and identity needed enemies to stay strong. This is an important teaching. The ego can survive on anything. If it cannot be proud of money, it becomes proud of purity. If it cannot be proud of status, it becomes proud of knowledge. If it cannot be proud of being right in business, it becomes proud of being right in spirituality. When ego is driving, practice becomes another arena for self-importance. Now let us go deeper. Why is fault-finding so addictive? Because it gives you a temporary sense of control. If you identify faults, you feel safer. You feel like you know what is wrong, so you can protect yourself. It also gives you a temporary sense of superiority. If you see someone as wrong, you feel like you are above them. But this temporary high costs you a lot. It costs you peace. It costs you connection. It costs you joy. It costs you humility. Then humility is necessary for awakening. Because awakening begins when you stop pretending you are above the human condition. There is a line in many teachings that points to this. When you look for faults outside, you strengthen faults inside. That does not mean you become blind. It means you understand the direction of attention. If you train your mind to see anger everywhere, you become angry. If you train your mind to see selfishness everywhere, you become bitter. If you train your mind to see stupidity everywhere, you become contemptuous. Contempt is spiritual death. Contempt is the opposite of compassion. Ethan began a new practice. When he noticed a fault in someone else, he would pause and ask, "What is happening in my mind right now? Is there irritation? Is there pride? Is there fear? Is there a need to control? Is there pain that I am projecting?" This is the practice of turning the light inward. And then he tried something even more radical. He began seeing other people's faults as reminders of his own training. If someone is rude, it reminds him to practice patience. If someone is selfish, it reminds him to practice generosity. If someone lies, it reminds him to practice honesty. If someone is arrogant, it reminds him to practice humility. Do you see the shift? The world stops being a courtroom and becomes a training ground. This is how destiny turns. When you stop feeding the habit of judgment, your heart becomes lighter. When your heart is lighter, your speech softens. When your speech softens, relationships improve. When relationships improve, your life becomes more supported. When you feel supported, fear reduces. When fear reduces, wisdom grows. It is a chain of causes and effects. Now I want to address the concern some of you might have. What about real harm? What about toxic behavior? What about injustice? Wisdom does not mean you accept harm. Wisdom means you respond without hatred. You can set boundaries without contempt. You can say no without humiliating someone. You can correct a problem without building an identity of being better. When you must speak up, speak with clarity and respect. When you must leave, leave without bitterness if possible. Not because the other person deserves it, but because your heart deserves peace. This is also compassion. Compassion is not always soft. Sometimes compassion is firm. But firm compassion is not cruel. It does not enjoy punishing. Ethan practiced this. He stopped lecturing his partner. He started listening. He apologized for using teachings as weapon. He admitted his own insecurity. He discovered that beneath judgment was fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of being hurt. Fear of being powerless. When he held that fear with kindness, the judgment loosened. He also noticed something else. Many of the faults he saw in others were the faults he hated in himself. When he saw laziness in others, it triggered his own fear of being lazy. When he saw emotionality in others, it triggered his own fear of losing control. When he saw incompetence in others, it triggered his own fear of failure. So he was not only judging them, he was fighting his own shadow. This is a deep doorway. If you use it well, it becomes liberation. When you notice yourself judging someone, ask gently, what part of me is being touched? What fear is being activated? What wound is being defended? Then practice compassion toward that place. This is how you stop projecting. Projection is exhausting. Ending projection brings peace. Let me share a personal reflection. There were times when I thought spiritual progress meant having high standards for everyone. I thought I was being righteous. But inside, I was tense. I was always disappointed. I was always critical. I was always lonely. Then I realized something simple. If I want a peaceful world, I must stop creating a war inside my own attention. That does not mean becoming naive. It means becoming wise. So I practiced noticing judgment and returning. Returning again and again. Returning is practice. Returning is awakening. If this resonates, share in the comments. Where do you judge the most? Family, work, online. Also share what happens inside your body when judgment arises. Tight throat, hard chest, heat in the face. Naming it can help loosen it. If you want more long videos that make spiritual teachings practical, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment to support this work. Your attention is your life. Guide it with wisdom and compassion. Input Article 10. Generated time 25/12/2012 This is the last article in this batch. The pain you keep avoiding might be your doorway. Why facing it can awaken you. Have you noticed that the more you run from a feeling, the more it follows you like a shadow? Have you ever wondered if your collapse is not caused by the storm outside, but by the way you keep abandoning yourself inside the storm? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about avoidance, pain, and awakening. Many people want spiritual practice to be a hiding place. They want it to be a bright room where nothing hurts. But real practice is not hiding. Real practice is learning how to meet life without being destroyed by it. The paradox is that the pain you avoid often becomes the exact doorway you need. Two main ideas will guide us. First, avoidance does not erase suffering. Avoidance multiplies suffering, because what you refuse to face becomes heavier in the dark. Second, facing pain does not mean drowning in pain. Facing pain means seeing it clearly, holding it with compassion, and responding with wisdom. That is how karma changes. That is how destiny turns. Let me tell you a story that unfolds slowly, because awakening usually unfolds slowly. I will call her Nora. Nora was the kind of person who looked functional. She worked. She smiled. She answered messages. She kept commitments. From the outside, you might think she was fine. Inside, she carried an old grief. Not the kind of grief people talk about easily. It was a layered grief. A childhood of emotional neglect. A few betrayals that taught her not to trust. A long history of trying to be lovable by being useful. Nora learned a survival strategy. Stay busy. If you stay busy, you do not have to feel. So she stayed busy. When sadness rose, she opened her phone. When fear rose, she planned more. When loneliness rose, she worked harder. When anger rose, she swallowed it and pretended it was not there. This worked for a while. The way denial works for a while. But denial is expensive. You pay with your body. You pay with your relationships. You pay with your peace. Nora began having insomnia. Her stomach became sensitive. She would feel irritated by small things. She would feel numb during moments that should feel joyful. She thought something was wrong with her. Then life delivered a crisis. The kind that exposes what you have been avoiding. A relationship ended suddenly. The ending was not gentle. It reopened every old wound. It told her, "See, you are not safe." It told her, "See, love does not last." It told her, "See, you should never open your heart again." Nora did what she always did. She ran. She ran into work. She ran into distractions. She ran into pretending she was fine. But the pain did not stay away. It grew teeth. It bit her at night. It bit her in quiet moments. It bit her in the middle of conversations when she suddenly felt like she was not really there. One night, she had a panic attack. She did not call it that. She just said, "I cannot breathe." Her chest felt tight. Her hands tingled. Her thoughts raced. She felt like she was dying. She survived the night. But the next morning, she realized something. Avoidance is not protection. Avoidance is postponement. The bill always comes. A friend suggested a simple practice. Not to fix everything at once, but to begin meeting the pain. Nora resisted. She said, "If I face it, I will fall apart." This fear is common. Many people believe that if they look directly at pain, they will drown. But what actually drowns you is not pain alone. What drowns you is resistance. Resistance adds tension on top of pain. Tension creates panic. Panic makes you feel helpless. So the practice begins with one radical move. Stop fighting the feeling. Nora started small. She set a timer for a short time. She sat in a quiet room. She placed a hand on her belly. She breathed slowly. She did not force thoughts away. She did not try to be calm. She simply allowed what was there to be there. Sadness rose quickly. Tears came. Fear rose. The mind started telling stories. You will be alone. You are not enough. You will never be loved. In the past, she would have run from these thoughts. This time, she tried something new. She said gently inside, "These are thoughts. These are fear stories. They are not prophecies." She returned to breath. This is what facing looks like. Not drama. Not magical vision. Just returning. Again and again. At first, she felt worse. This is also common. When you turn toward pain, you stop numbing. So you feel what you have been carrying. It can feel intense. People misinterpret this as failure. It is not failure. It is exposure. It is the wound being seen. You cannot heal what you refuse to see. Something changed. Nora began to notice that feelings move. A wave of sadness rises, peaks, then falls. A wave of fear rises, peaks, then falls. A wave of anger rises, peaks, then falls. She realized she was not a permanent sadness. She was a living field of changing experience. This is insight into impermanence. And impermanence is not depressing. Impermanence is freedom. Because if something changes, it is not a prison. Nora also began seeing the deeper structure behind her pain. Beneath grief was longing for love. Beneath anger was a desire for respect. Beneath fear was attachment to control. Beneath numbness was exhaustion. When she saw this, compassion became possible. She stopped treating herself like a broken machine. She started treating herself like a human being who survived with the best tools she had. And now is learning new tools. This is crucial. Many people avoid pain because they secretly believe pain means they are defective. They think, if I feel this, it proves I am weak. But pain is not proof of weakness. Pain is proof you are alive. Pain is proof you care. Pain is proof something needs attention. Facing pain is not weakness. Facing pain is courage. Now the karmic part. When Nora avoided pain, she coped with habits that created harm. She would lash out, then feel guilty. She would withdraw, then feel lonely. She would seek validation, then feel emptier. When she faced pain, those habits weakened. She had less need to numb, less need to cling, less need to manipulate, less need to explode. That is karma changing. Karma is not only fate falling from the sky. Karma is habit energy. Habit energy is the repeated response. When response changes, destiny changes. Nora also faced another layer. The hardest layer. Forgiveness. Not the fake forgiveness that says everything is fine. Real forgiveness that says, what happened hurt, and I will not keep poisoning my own life by replaying hatred every day. She learned that hatred is a way of holding the past in the present. The past already happened. Hatred makes it happen again inside you. She did not forgive quickly. She did not force it. She practiced releasing in small pieces. Each time resentment rose, she named it, breathed, and returned. This was not passive. This was training. Training is what builds freedom. Now I want to highlight a powerful point. Many people think awakening is escaping pain. But often, awakening begins when pain forces you to stop running. Pain becomes the doorway because pain reveals attachment. If you did not cling, you would not suffer the same way. If you did not demand permanence, loss would hurt but not destroy. If you did not demand control, uncertainty would be challenging but not terrifying. Facing pain reveals what you cling to, so you can begin loosening the grip. This is why so many teachings say suffering can be a teacher. Not because suffering is good, but because suffering can wake you up to the truth of your mind. Nora eventually noticed something beautiful. Her heart became softer. Her patience grew. She became more understanding of others. She stopped judging people who were struggling. She became more honest. She became more present. She did not become a perfect person. She became a real person. And realness is the ground of compassion. Now let me speak to you, because you might be carrying your own avoided pain. Maybe you avoid grief by staying busy. Maybe you avoid fear by controlling everyone. Maybe you avoid shame by pretending you are above it. Maybe you avoid loneliness by chasing attention. Maybe you avoid anger by smiling while your body tightens. Whatever it is, consider this. The doorway is not far. It is right inside the feeling you run from. Facing does not mean you have to do it alone. If your pain feels overwhelming, seek support. A trusted friend, a therapist, a wise teacher, a supportive community. This is not weakness. This is wisdom. Even strong people need support, especially strong people. If you want a simple start, do this. Choose a small time. Sit quietly. Breathe. Name what is there. Sadness is here. Fear is here. Tightness is here. Then return to breath. End with a gentle wish. May I meet life with wisdom. May I be kind to myself. May I become less harmful. May I be compassionate to others. Then take one small wise action in the real world. Drink water. Eat. Sleep. Walk. Speak honestly. Apologize. Set a boundary. Ask for help. Small actions are powerful when they are guided by clarity. Thank you for being here. In the comments, if you feel safe, share what pain you have been avoiding and what helped you face it. Your story may become a light for someone else. If you want more long-form videos like this, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment to support the work. Keep practicing the return. The doorway is closer than you think.
Life gets noisy. Work, stress, expectations. Sometimes we lose touch with the quiet part of ourselves. Bracelet isn't just an accessory. It's a small reminder that you deserve peace. You deserve moments of stillness. You deserve to hold on to your inner balance. If one of these bracelets speaks to your heart, you'll find the purchase link in the description below. And even more auctions available on our channel's shop page. Pick home the one that feels right.